Good morning.
Good morning, guys. How are you?
Hey, George. Good morning.
George looks like he just woke up.
Hey, you know that I've crack a doom.
Well, I know at least you saw the email early.
Yeah, that's right. So NACVA has just announced that the Certified Value Growth Advisor credential and Ken Sanginario's software, the Value Opportunity Profile, is being promoted by the NACVA. And to which my answer to Ed was essentially, so what? So what? They're not innovating. They're stuck in their rut. And I do wish them all the. I really like the guys at the NACVA, and Ken Sanginari is a good. So I wish them all the luck in the world. You know, we are light years ahead of where those guys are. I'm so excited about where we are and where we're going. They're in a different world, literally a different world. What the hell is going on here?
That's why.
What you get for driving with your windows open while trying to talk to Larry? Wow. Yeah, but Ed, that's good for them. I wish them all the luck in the world. They're focusing on the wrong thing, right? They're not focusing. If we think about what we do, let's think about a three-legged stool. So one of your colleagues paid me an immense compliment the other day, and I'm going to talk about it because it was an immense compliment. He said, listen, George, you've now written the third leg of the stool. You have traction, which is really good at certain things that are great. I mean, Gino did some great work there, right? And the body of work that came out of it's fantastic. Vern, the father of it all, right?
Right.
Scaling up also. Great work, great body of work. What they are missing, there's too much in my perspective that's qualitative about what they do. And instead of asking ourselves as a management team what our rocks are, why don't we look at it from the market's perspective? And what growth drive defines, what the three dimensions of growth define are the growth driving objectives from the private capital markets perspective. What are the companies that they deem best have as common characteristics? And that's what we bring to the table. We say, don't ask yourself what the rocks are. These are the rocks. And here's a prioritization. They also don't provide a prioritization scheme, right? What do you
Correct.
should be first? Well, we say, you know what? We prioritize, and we prioritize the whole stack. And then within the stack, we say, hey, listen, we want to recognize, Madam CEO, we want to recognize and respect where you want to go. And if your goal is to improve the quality of life and make your business easier to run, and that's all you want to do right now, we respect that. And let's do that. Let's implement the first dimension. Do you want to grow? Great. So does everyone. We respect and serve that goal. And if you eventually think you might want to transfer, we're going to help you when the time is right, make the purposeful connection between profits or revenue and value and transferable value. And let's make this easier for you. Good morning, Joe. We're going to start at the beginning, and we will have built strength in the machine, right? We will have built power in the machine so that when you approach the third dimension, a lot of the groundwork will have been done. And that's what we do. And so if you're still running around talking about valuation and company-specific risk as if you're a druid with some, staff and mistletoe, and you're like, I declare the value of your business. I know it's according to standards. I know it's incredibly important. But I also know that most CEOs get their valuation. They look at it going, I don't understand. Why am I not worth $12 million? Why am I worth $8 million? Because you have company-specific risk. They don't make value actionable. Ken's software makes value actionable, sort of, and it's insanely complicated. All right, I'm off my soapbox. So that's why I say, good luck to you, ladies and gentlemen. We are on a different path, and we are going to deliver a lot more. We are already delivering more good, more real good, more quickly than they will. And, so God bless and good luck. And I really like, I will say without, really like and respect Parnell. I like and respect Brian. I like and respect Ken. And I really do wish them well, because it is a huge market. There's plenty of market here. We have some really exciting things going on that are actually going to inure to your benefit. So they're also talking amongst themselves. I want to go out to the world and find you opportunities. I am going out to the world and finding you opportunities, because unless we connect you with private businesses, no good happens, right? Unless we make these businesses growing, immortal, profitable, transferable, then no good is happening out there. Okay, now I'm really off my soapbox. I'll shut up. And another thing.
I've got a quick question for
No
those of
coffee.
you that are here. I only have until just before top of the hour before I have to get on the call. All of you that are working in the growth drive, like you, Duke and Joe and Ed, are you able to do what you do entirely remotely? Or do you find that you still have to visit with the customer once a quarter or 3 times during an engagement of a year? Or what do you have to do? Because I'm trying to find a business model that allows me to do most of my, if not all of my work remotely to minimize travel. And I'm not sure how far within this I can do. Certainly I can do a Zoom interview with somebody and I can go through the growth drive criteria. I can do a lot of coaching. There are people who do executive coaching in their slippers and their night clothes all the time, I know. So what's your experience and what's the greater experience within the community, George?
That is a fantastic question. I will put it, I know what my perspective is based on what you guys have reported back. Ed, Joe, Steve, what are you finding? Finding for yourselves and hearing from your colleagues. Oh, Ed, you're muted, man.
Well, it's just a personal preference. I think anything is possible. I've met with a Vistage chair, for instance, and my paradigm was it was a face-to-face confrontational one-to-one meeting on a monthly basis, and that was held in the client's office. Well, he's like, I don't go to my client's office. They see me once a month at my Vistage meetings. There's a data point, right? I think more and more executives, especially on the monthly check-ins, prefer to do it virtual and go on with their day. Quarterlies tend to be kind of, a little more of the team gets together in that it's more of a camaraderie and there's value in being there outside of the rigors of the actual designated time. There might be a social interaction piece on a monthly basis. I don't know. I think monthly still is a virtual. So I would try to, we'll try to position it as quarterly, face-to-face, annual face-to-face, and then monthly. And if we would pop into a weekly meeting, which would be rare, those would all be virtual. So I think it's a hybrid model, to be honest. But I think there's some value in the face-to-face, and especially if it's a longer, day, and you get some sidebar conversations going that kind of give you a better, gleaming and quite frankly, creates a little more, connectivity to you and then the client and their extended leadership team.
Sure. Ed, you had the
Steve,
client. Go ahead. Sorry, Paul. Go ahead.
Steve, how about you? What in your activity, or Ed, you just came on?
I think that I don't disagree with what Joe just said, but I think from your business standpoint and from an effectiveness, I think you can be 90% effective with 100% virtual. If someone wants to pay you to take a day or 2 days to travel someplace, then okay, but they need to remunerate you for that 24 hours or 48 hours you're going to take out of your schedule.
Yeah, it's interesting. Steve, could I pick up on that point for a sec? This is a personal preference, and anybody who's ever asked me to come out and help them or to be a fly on the wall or help moderate, I charge a per diem. It's something that I experienced when I was earlier in my career, and it's so rather than keeping receipts and having to explain, you just charge a per diem and you say it's X dollars per day. That includes travel and lodging. That's just I agree with what Steve just said. You have guys in this community who are doing a lot of their work, most of their work, actually to Joe's point, also virtually. And the pandemic, I don't know if you know this. I started my career in video conferencing, and we used to run around saying it would do all the things that we now find that it does. But Ed, you had the client in California. Did you ever meet them face to face?
Never. I never met them. I worked with them.
It's in Ohio, for those of you watching out there.
I worked on them with 2.5 years, and then most recently, the one I worked on in Virginia for almost 1.5 years before they finally made the sale. I was not getting commission on the transaction, but I got well compensated for advising them and guiding them as they looked at financials and did the right kinds of improvements necessary to receive eventually an offer that they were very satisfied with.
And I'd make one more comment, then I've got a question for you, Paul. Larry has not been in these calls, and Larry and I talk essentially every day because he spends a lot of time face-to-face with clients. Now he's in a killer market. He's in the Manhattan metro, right? But he also has virtual clients. And I mean, it's probably a question he'd love to answer as well. Paul, what caused you to ask the question? Why do you ask?
Well, my business model has primarily been going down the path of the LX Council. I'm trying to do that remotely and maybe get together once a year, maybe more, at a trade show or something like that. It's been difficult getting those groups formed. You've seen even, with what you're doing, how difficult it is to get a group formed. Yep. So that's a monthly remuneration at a low level. Now, if you take what you could do with Growth Drive, you can have a monthly income as a retainer for helping a company. That's almost equivalent to the month fees that you would get from a group of 6 to 10 LX Council. And there's the upside potential of commissions in the sale. And you still have, in both models, you still have to always be trying to find new prospects and different things.
Yeah.
And so my experience with helping people with selling their company, the ones that I've done through SCORE, the one that I can think of, I never met the person. We entirely did it video, even though he's here in town. Another that I worked with for a couple of years on a growth drive before they decided to sell. He was old school and he wanted me in person, but it was only an hour's drive from here. So that was easy. One of the reasons I'm going LX Council is to be able to access the entire country and not compete with Vistage, which is very strong here in the Portland area. So just trying to understand, if you guys and gals out there have had experience with doing the growth drive type stuff and M&A entirely remotely. And it sounds like, yes,
Yeah.
That's good.
I would say, since I've sold a few businesses, I'm more comfortable doing the growth drive remotely. I'm comfortable doing the M&A stuff, mostly remotely, but maybe one visit to the facility is useful so you can lay eyes on exactly what the place looks like, because that's going to be a factor in how viable the business sale is.
Interesting. When I ran my manufacturing company, I would obviously go, we had some key suppliers. And at the beginning of the relationship, there was always a meeting or two, at their location. But after that, by and large, and it wasn't even video, it was not even these, right? It's on the old steam telephone. Back when these were so unreliable, you had to have a handset. And the virtual model works. It's interesting, Paul, and I'm not going to wax philosophical, but if we think about human history, a lot of commerce, especially the more complicated commerce, you would never meet the person. It was done by letters, right? Anyway, I'm not going to let's not go down that path. But Paul, I admire what you do because you are able to take your expertise and you're able to find the people with whom you have community, right? And bring them into a group of their non-competitive peers. And I think, I like the model from one guy's perspective.
Just another example, Paul. So I'm in the Charlotte area and I'm in dialogue with a business, an M&A potential client, and he's old school. So I had to fly up to New York last week so he could lay eyes on me face to face and kind of take the measure of me. And so that was fine. But I also got the grand tour of this facility and was able to get a feel for him too.
Yeah.
That's before you have a contract. So that's your marketing dollars having to be spent on doing that sales call.
That was my nickel. I didn't volunteer to do that.
You better make sure they're qualified, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I interrupted you though, Steve. What else were you going to say there?
Well, I think from now that he and I have both sat across from each other and exchanged words, I think for the most part, if I end up with the engagement, we can pretty much do everything remotely going forward.
It's interesting, Paul. I'm thinking if you think about it in terms of are you a 1 or a 5? We talk about that in the launch course. We talk about it more in certification. A 1 being let's say it's an exit planning wealth advisor who really is a lead generator from our perspective, someone who's going to say, hey, Paul, come on in and help Steve. I need somebody, as opposed to, so that might be done. That's going to be done more or less face to face, right? But if you're a 2, a 3, or a 4, a 5 being like a fractional CEO. So our world is mostly 2s, 3s, and 4s, right? As we How deep do we go with a client? And this builds on the point Joe just made. If you're a 2, you're an architect, that might be able to be done entirely remotely. If you're a 3, the architect and the general contractor, that can be done by and large. It's probably more what Steve just referred to. You might have to do a site visit, but it can be done remotely. And if you're a 4, there are going to be times, to Joe's point, especially for maybe the first monthly meeting, for the quarterlies, definitely, and for the annuals, absolutely, that you're going to have to be boots in the room. You can't facilitate, for example, a senior leadership alignment workshop. It would be more difficult, a different experience remotely versus standing in the room. Just thinking out loud.
Yeah. Well, and my experience in the corporate world too, to your point, you spend most of the year just talking to people on the phone or on video conferences and different things, but every now and then you get together and you have some sort of bonding kind of fun exercise or something that you do, which, that's something that can handle. But one of the best ways of getting business is to go out there and speak. Well, I did that for a decade already. I look back at some of my travel records and, I was on the road far too much for what my wife and I want now with what we're doing. And even though I did all that, I kept the business going. I pay for my toys and things, but I did not make $1 million and bank it and make it into transferable wealth along the way.
And Paul, thank you for the opening, because that is one of the great reasons that we have a summit, right? So that we can all get together.
Yeah, I understand.
And we have a great one.
If I took in the required board meeting that I'm doing for my trade association in Washington, D.C., threw in your summit down in Florida, and threw in Tina's activity down in Florida, I would be out for between 3 and 4 weeks solid, and that's a no-go.
Yeah.
So I love you.
It would have taken that long just to get to the East Coast, Paul.
Yeah, that's the problem. But while I was out there, I could just go up and down the East Coast.
Yep. Yeah, Tina's is going to be good as well.
Yeah, it is. I would love to hear and interact with Vern Harnish. That would be great. So, yeah. Well, thank you, gentlemen. I got to go off and talk remotely to my Indian company, whom I met one person in person back 2 years ago, and he's no longer with the company, but I still have the client. So
that's awesome.
It's amazing. And the Indians do not like turning on their video, it seems. They just don't do it, because it's, right now it's 8:30 at night over there. They're at home and they don't want to turn on their videos. So
yeah.
Thanks, guys. Take care, everybody.
Oh, have a great day, man. Good luck.
Bye.
Thank you. Who wants to shift gears? Anybody have something they want to kick around?
Sounds like you got something on your mind, George. So have at it.
Oh, I do. And I have to get off in about 10 minutes, but check this out. So let me tee it up. So you've gone through the Clarity 2 deep analysis, and we have everything analyzed out, and we're asking ourselves, okay, how does the senior team, we need to, sure, we have a stack and sure we have prioritization, but we have to ask ourselves a couple of questions. What impact, I think the two main questions are, what impact will this work have? Let's say we're trying to grow profits, right? What impact will this have on profitability? And then how easy is it to implement? And we need to look at both of those through the lens of people, knowledge or expertise, internal knowledge or expertise, and resources, cash and otherwise. So if we take those and we look at, let's just think about the first 8 growth driving objectives. Now, I will argue loud and long that we need to focus on effective senior leadership first. In fact, I think that's where Vern starts in scaling up, right? It's where Gino starts in traction with core values, and a fantastic exercise. Go ahead,
Hey,
man.
George, you just opened probably a 2-hour discussion, and you only got about 5 minutes to Tom interrupting.
No,
but you and I touched on that a little bit yesterday. So I started going down the rabbit hole of important versus urgent. I spent a little time doing that, and it gave myself a headache. But one of the things that occurred to me is that it's also what you do is kind of directly related to the size of the company as well.
True.
So that's a third dimension, if you will, because when an early stage company, it could be just one person or 2 people or 3 people. So probably the senior leadership team isn't the biggest deal. But I could go on and on. But anyway, I think there's a third dimension, and that being the size of the company.
I think you're absolutely right. And our sweet spot is, we always say, 2.5 million is a great starting point. 3 to 5 million is a better sort of low end for our market gross revenues, and then up. I mean, people love to talk about working with $100 million businesses, but they're hen's teeth, right? They're out there, but they're rare. So we're really talking about the 5 to 50, and we've all seen the pyramid. There are a lot more companies with 5 million than with 50, right? We'll have to change that and turn it into a silo, but that's not going to happen. So Steve, your point's a good one. I would argue, if you were the sole member of the team, I would still say, hey, Steve, start planning today for what your company needs to look like for you as the shareholder down the road. And that would be the one thing from effective senior leadership that I would say, just have goals for the value of your business. And in fact, guys, I'd love to kick this around, but if we think about that as possibly sort of our initial vision, I want to have a business, and it's personal, but I want to have a business that will, that I can sell one day for $10 million. That's something big. It gives us something to shoot for that's pretty far out on the horizon, as you're standing there with a business plan in one hand and no customers in the other. Okay, so yeah, our conversation yesterday was a good one. Well,
by the way, George, I talked to a business owner yesterday. One of these days may employ me, but he's sitting there with a business value of $1 million, and he said in 5 years, or actually he said 4 years, I want to sell this for 10 million. Okay. So it's exactly that situation.
And by the way, can do. Let's figure out how to create financial value that'll substantiate that in the market. And if we can, engineer a business that may have strategic value. I tell the story of my friend Jamie Hardig and taking the fight to Pelican and doing, and he did it incredibly well. He's smart, whatever. But so there are ways to get there.
Yep.
So just to finish your thought there, George, on all these determining factors, what makes it easier, right? You're sort of trying to get some low-hanging fruit, get some quick wins. Have you ever brought up the fact that we got to get some alignment around comp plans and incentive plans, and is that worthwhile to bring up early on in the conversation?
Compensation and benefits for all employees are in line with industry norms and include performance-based incentives. And yes, Joe, and it's funny. I was just having this conversation yesterday with the owner of a marketing firm, and we were talking about this topic, and I didn't get that deep into it with her. But it was, are you paying what you can afford, or are you paying what the market will bear? Because that is going to, that has all sorts of ramifications. But you're right, Joe. And I mean, there's so many topics here. Do we have the right people? That's something we need to figure out. And the CEO often comes into the conversation thinking that they have the right people. Well, Steve's been with me for 20 years. He does a great job. And I might be looking at Steve as a hard-nosed outsider and saying, Steve's a great guy. And let's take something I've seen personally, and he's a terrific CFO. But the guy has no bloody business running this company. And you are sort of abdicating your accountabilities to Steve, who's a great CFO, but pardon the term, craptastic leader, a destructive leader, and destroying the company in the process. Do we have the right people? And this is Vern, right? We have the right people doing the right things right. And first, there's that first lens of, do we really have the right people in the room? And the Senior Leadership Alignment Workshop is a great place it's not triage, but it's a great learning lab for your client, the CEO, to start asking some hard questions, because she's asking her people across, let's say we do it with Clarity Level 1, across all 24 growth driving objectives, or we're doing it where we have the entire senior team and we're doing the deep analysis. By the way, would highly recommend, and doing dimension 1 and possibly dimension 2, but not trying to do all 3 dimensions. That's an aside. But Joe, your point's a very good one. Absolutely. And here's the thing. You actually just closed the loop for me. I'm going to share my screen. Let me make sure I've got the right thing up here. Yeah. Excuse me. So if we're going to ask, if we have I just threw this together, I didn't even give it a title, but if we ask ourselves, do we have the people, the knowledge, and the resources? Now, we can do this alone with the CEO, right? When we could do this with the senior team, and this is kind of the qualitative meets the quantitative. But I've taken the 8 growth driving objectives from the first dimension. I said, okay, well, what impact will these have on profits? That's more quantitative, right? Mm-hmm. It has a qualitative edge, but that's more quantitative. When we get into ease of implementation, mm-hmm. Now we're asking some much harder questions about this right here, this mother. Do you have the people, the knowledge, and the resources? And you can't help but looking around the room saying, Steve is stop picking on Steve. Frank is a fantastic controller. I may have made the mistake of giving him the CFO title. Happens so often. We need to give Frank a promotion. We don't want Frank to leave. Let's make Frank the CFO. Frank isn't a CFO. Frank is a very good controller. Now we're asking ourselves some harder questions. Going to grade exercise one-on-one with the CEO, or possibly a workshop with a senior leadership team. And what does this look like if I threw numbers up here, guys, don't judge. But what does this look like if we do it on a chart and we say, all right, here's ease of implementation as our y-axis and impact on profits. And where are we? Where's our low-hanging fruit? Well, suddenly, given our people knowledge and resources, maybe we can quantify customer satisfaction and start bragging about it. Maybe we can improve, we can improve our sales process. Look at this. We're going to stop, for example, I'm just teasing this out, right? And we're going to stop the sales guys are really discounting to close deals. Let's get some more discipline in there. Let's stop the discounting, figure out if our pricing, if our pricing strategy is in line. Let's do it. There's a bunch of things we can do with the sales process and start looking at what should we be working on. Strong margins it's a 4 on ease of implementation, but it has an immense impact. And now we're starting to look at these in a different context, right? Great. And I know we're getting a little bit into the qualitative, and that's fine, right? We are people after all. But
did you consider, George, that 3-dimensional model there would add the dollar amount that we've determined would be a change in their pickup if they would, so that size of that bubble would also constrict or expand based on the dollars that we thought the return might be.
So we can look at, where am I here? I'm in Ridge Specialty Tooling. Joe, great question. What is the ROI, right? So we can break it down, and you could add this to that chart very easily. What's the ROI from working on these? Now that's a value judgment, right? What impact will this have on the value? Yeah, that's fascinating. I've been playing around with that. I talked to Steve about it. I just thought I'd throw that out there.
I think that's the really good way to kind of drive the priority conversation or priorities around in the conversation, because we have to deal with the reality with the CEO. What resource are there? What talent do you currently have? And we got to deal with what we got in hand and be pragmatic about it. And if it stretches the relationship on, who are we to judge, right?
Yeah.
They're feeling bad because they're tracking behind. Well, what is behind? I mean, it's such a custom product that, it should be done in 3 years. Well, in 24 months they're done, or in 48 months they're not even done. So I think that's the beauty of the relationship. You just got to make sure you're not caught in the terms and conditions where you run out of runway and somehow you've got to deliver on something that's taken too long and you're way under budget, or you've structured a deal that just doesn't benefit you if the relationship doesn't get done in the time frame allowed.
I agree. And by the way, guys, that chart Andy Weevil uses this with this guy. Andy Weevil, 10x growth, one of our community leading lights. He's the one who said, George, I'm looking at it this way. And I said, love the Eisenhower squares, right?
Yeah.
And that's a very good point, Joe. And the other thing is, a conversation that we don't have time to discuss today. I was talking about it with one of your colleagues yesterday is fatigue. There's a term out there, EOS fatigue, that we hear, but I think it's more broadly, I think it's strategic execution fatigue, right? And And how do we prevent that from happening? And Joe, so we not only do we run out of we run out of rope, but we get to the end of our leash, and our client might be like, wow, maybe I want to go back to, maybe I just want to be left alone, which happens routinely. And that's part of the execution leadership system, is to keep the positive feedback loop going. All right, guys, I'm going to have to bolt here in about 2 minutes. I should have left 5 minutes ago, but that's okay. I'll just skip a cup of coffee.
So is that when you get further along, it'd be great to kind of take a look at that analysis and as a way to kind of three-dimensionalize the resources and the pragmatic of, we can't do it all. And here's where we suggest to take down, because there's some things you can really, simple programs you can put in, elements of EOS you can bring into the leadership team, even just strictly accountability, part of that training, so, but I'd be curious to see that dimensional model.
And Joe, as we implement business flow is our flash report, right? Our scorecard for the business. And as we implement business flow over time, that's going to boil up. Wow, maybe I don't have the people, the knowledge, or the resources, because business flow week after week, and that is failure there is actually a positive, because it allows us to get better. I'm not saying fire people. I'm saying coach them up. Let's do some professional development if they need to go. Now, if there's any toxicity, but anyway, we could talk about this all day, right?
So, part of that senior leadership team and the buy-in is they have to be part of building the trap or whatever I use a poor term, and I use a neck, the noose around the neck, and their finger.
I use leash.
So when it gets tighter, they're like, oh, I guess I was part of partial. It's not like Moses coming down and get the 10 commandments. You will do this and follow me, and don't ask questions. This is very collaborative, and the ability for you to collaborate early on and get that buy-in is going to be huge dividends later on, right? So
10 man, 10 out of 10. That is, Joe, having if they're not part of designing the solution, you are setting yourself back. You're not making it impossible, but people need to be part of the analysis and the design if they're going to be part of the execution. They don't have to be, right? But you're making it harder. Because if we show up, and we teach this in the launch course and in certification and in the Fearless Business, heck, that's what Fearless Business Advisor, the facilitation techniques, is designed to deliver. How do we make sure that everyone, it's not a kumbaya, and this is not a committee, but everyone needs to be heard, right? Read Turn the Ship Around by L. David Marquette. Everyone needs to be heard. Then they take an order, right? But at least they were heard and respected, and they have the dignity of knowing they were in the room. I talk about dignity a lot. Yeah, Joe, this is a great point. All right. Closing thoughts. Steve?
You've there's an opportunity for a lot of learning and a lot of enhancement of skills to continue to dive in what you and I talked about yesterday and what you just talked about here. There's a ton to be.
There is absolutely, my man. And what I just showed you is in all likelihood going to be the centerpiece of the Fearless Business Advisor Facilitation Skills Workshop. Wow, that's a long name.
Yeah. This is exactly why people come to you, George, and be part of the community for this thinking that, we don't need to reinvent the mousetrap. We just need to get better and consistent at delivering it. So these sort of ideas are fabulous, and thank you.
Oh, sure.
You have a great day, okay?
Thanks. You too, man. Thank you, Joe. Thanks for being here. I value having you guys here every week. And thank you. All right. Have a great week, guys. I'll talk to you soon. Bye, Ed.
Bye.
So long.
Bye.
Have a great day.
Bye, Ed.